Kuzambo, my name is Sangye Choiphel, and this is Talking Cinema. Actors are an essential part of the cinema. Actors play a role which transforms them into the characters within the created narrative world. Actors throughout history are essentially storytellers. And through stories, we share our passion, our dreams, our heartaches and our heartbreaks, our sorrows and our joy. Stories are universal at its heart. They help us understand ourselves better and find commonalities with others. To put it simply, actors' role is to behave truthfully in an imaginary world. On that note, to talk a bit about creative and artistic profession, such as acting, let me introduce my guest, Mr. Kunga Tenzin Dorji, a teacher, a journalist, a radio personality, and an actor. He is fondly known to most of us as Aue Supe. He has been involved in television series as well as films the likes of Not Mr. Perfect, Honey Giver Amongst the Dogs, which is the latest he might have that you were involved in. So welcome to the show, Mr. Kunga Tenzin.
Thank you, Sangye. Thank you for the very kind introduction as well. I have to say, you've given me many feathers in my cap. I don't do any of them very convincingly, by the way. And before we begin, I'm liking this sofa, by the way. I can imagine that a lot of other posteriors have been here before me.
Yes, they have, and I'm hoping to have more on that very
Cool.
chair.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure how to sit over here, but it's good. It's fun. It's fun.
Okay, as long as you're comfortable.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable. Very comfortable.
What you been up to?
All right, okay, a lot of writing recently.
Okay.
A lot of writing. So I've just finished editing a book, in fact, written by a college mate of mine, and he hired me to edit the book. That was fun, incredible fun. But a lot of the writing that I've been doing recently has been very technical, project proposals and stuff like that. So not very inspiring stuff, not very artistic either, not at all
So
artistic.
very business oriented.
Yeah,
type
business oriented
proposals,
stuff.
presentations.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, like I said, not very inspiring. But the book was tremendous fun. And besides that, yeah, the occasional voiceovers for documentaries. I'm also working on a documentary at the moment, writing the script for a documentary.
Wonderful.
Which has been 3 years in the making, by the way.
Okay, what is it about?
It's about a yak herder in Laya. And in
Okay.
fact, it just tells the story of Laya, a community that is possibly one of the last communities in the world to be touched by modernization.
Wow.
And is struggling to come to terms with that. So the metaphor, as it were, that we've used in this is this 75-year-old lady
Okay.
who has known no other life except yak
yak
herding,
herding.
right? Even her children. I'm going off on a tangent over
That's
here.
all
but
right.
It's all right. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so her children are very well settled because they've been harvesting cordyceps and they own buildings in Thimphu, etc. But even when she comes for medical treatment, because she's a high blood pressure patient, so even when she comes to Thimphu, they have to pitch a tent outside the house for her. So she's known nothing but that nomadic life.
Sure,
And
that's
she
what she's
doesn't-
comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. And she cannot stay in a house. She feels claustrophobic. And she loves the way of life of the nomad, you know?
Sure.
And unfortunately, her children don't want to take it up. And so we're seeing that yak herding is possibly one of those things that
It's a
may be
dying trade,
Yeah, exactly,
right.
exactly. And that's a bit worrying as well because, highland animals, they have a great impact on the environment and in the ecology of even lower lying areas.
Sure.
And the Himalayas are a place where 1/5 of the world's population is dependent on the water from the Himalayas.
That's
you know,
right.
So, yeah,
That's
so-
right. Very interesting. When can we expect this documentary?
I
to
have
be
no
out?
idea. This has been being done by my friend Sonom Yangzom. She's brought me in to write the script, and we're trying to do it differently without having a narrator's voice and
Okay.
stuff like that. So she has 3 years of footage. In fact, 4 years, I think, of footage.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an extensive project.
It is. So I have to go through all of that
Sure.
and try and make sense of it in a nice way.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's my challenge
in a
right now.
sequencing ways where you could tell the story. In a
Yeah,
proper
but it
way.
doesn't necessarily have to be chronological.
Sure.
Because that's just too easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But-
And that's the beauty about documentaries or films because it's non-linear. You could go all
Yeah,
around
yeah.
as long as the sequencing is there.
True. True. But as you know, in fiction, you have a lot more room.
Right.
You know, but in non-fiction, there are
right.
these two goalposts, as it were. You
Right.
can't go beyond that.
That's
right.
right.
So how do you play within those bounds? That's the fun.
That's
In fact, I
fascinating.
think my level of comfort with films has been more in documentaries. I've written over 50, 60 possibly documentary and,
Wow.
and awareness films, you know.
Sure.
So yeah, possibly that many. So I'm a lot more comfortable with non-fiction. I tried my hand at writing scripts, fiction scripts. I suck at it, big time.
But hopefully you won't give up on it.
Oh, I don't think I will. I don't
Okay.
think I will. And especially this last book that I edited, that kind of like gave me a spurt in my belief in myself that, okay, there is a possibility.
Sure.
You know, so yeah, I definitely won't discount anything. For all you know, I might try all sorts of things. For all you know, I might end up as a cab driver also at some point. No, and besides, I think if you were a cab driver and you kept an account of it, a journal of it, you would get some incredible stories for a great book, you know?
I think so.
Yeah,
I definitely think so. I mean, wow. But I want to get into like, okay, so there's no narration or voiceover on this particular documentary.
That's what we're trying, but who knows? Eventually what comes out is something that even I don't know at this moment.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just trying to figure that out right now.
Well, I mean, we would love to hear your voice. I mean, you have such powerful voice. and,
no,
you know,
it's probably
it's one of a
been
kind.
overdone. Yeah.
But we would love to hear your voice. I mean, you know how David Attenborough does the Wild Planet.
Yeah, I know.
It's something similar
Fascinating.
within the Bhutanese context. I
Right,
mean,
right,
your
right.
voice is it stands out.
Thank you.
There.
Thank you.
But what else have you been doing? I know you've been involved in a film.
Yes, but this was almost 2 years ago. The film is well finished. It's been done, but you know the pandemic came about
Sure.
and theaters are closed, so obviously it hasn't been released.
Okay.
But this is the one that I've really been looking forward to. You know, I've done, I don't know, possibly 7, 8, or possibly 10 movies up until now. And this is the one that I feel is the one where I've done something special, I feel.
Okay.
And it's a character that has some of my personal traits, but some that doesn't. But the thing is, it's Bhutan's first sporting movie.
Wow.
It's about football.
Okay.
You know, and we have our own superstar, CG7,
Sangye Choiphel, right?
Yes, Parawa, in a leading role as well.
Okay.
So this was finished about 2 years ago, but it still hasn't been released. I'm dying to see that film.
Well, will they be releasing it anytime soon, or because
As far
of the
as I know-
pandemic? I know the theater experience of watching a film like that is somewhat questionable now.
Right,
But
true.
there are platforms, OTT platforms, video streaming platforms that are coming up.
Right.
Perhaps maybe we could see it in these kind of platforms.
Maybe that's an idea I'll have to pitch to the producer.
Okay.
But I met him, in fact, today. We had lunch together. But we didn't talk about the film. We talked about
Okay.
something entirely different.
Okay.
And I get that's a decision that is best left to him, I suppose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we can't wait for it. I'm sure most of the audience are also waiting for it. I mean, Sangye Choiphel,
yes,
right? So
yes.
hey,
And he's a very decent actor, by the way.
is he?
Yeah, I mean, he's so used to doing stuff on social media,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And he's not camera shy, certainly, not by any stretch of the imagination. So he, for a first-time actor, he brings a level of confidence that has been quite surprisingly heartwarming, in fact.
That's pretty crazy. I
Right.
mean, like I remember, I think before he gained the stardom, I've made a small little snippet profile documentary on him.
Okay.
On doing his football thing, and I remember him being very shy. But I
Right.
think he's built himself up
Right,
to it, you know,
right,
and he
true,
has to be. I
true.
mean, he's a role model, right? After
True,
all,
true.
so that's wonderful news.
I think over the years, what he's come to understand is that he will be increasingly under the media spotlight.
That's right.
And he has, in that way, adapted himself, I think, to grow.
Right.
And I have seen that, having done many interviews with him over the years and shared the spotlight in certain areas with him, I have seen that he is, in fact, a person who's blossoming even personally in the way he projects his personality. And he's a thorough professional, by the way.
Yes, he is.
He
I
brings a professional attitude to everything. He was my Guwahati. He was my roommate while we were in Guwahati
Okay.
shooting.
Okay.
And he'd get up early in the morning, and
Right.
and there I am trying to get some extra hours of sleep, and he's doing his push-ups and
Right. He's
and
very
stuff like that.
disciplined.
He
He's a
is,
very
he is,
disciplined
he is
person.
incredibly, and he's a really nice guy on top
Right.
of that. A wonderful person. I love the guy tremendously.
Well, okay, let's talk about acting. I mean,
All right,
I know
okay,
you've
yes.
written, you've been involved in films, you've done voiceovers, narrations within the documentaries. You
Right.
do your radio
Right.
program on Radio Valley. Acting, what got you into it?
All right, okay.
Like, how did that happen?
See, it's like this. A lot of people know me in Bhutan right now, okay? And I have to admit, and I tell you this 100% honestly, Sangye, I never looked for fame.
Okay.
I never looked for a name.
All right.
It wasn't my idea, you know, I didn't want to do that. I'm a gregarious personality. Usually I'll be the life of the party, you know, but I really wasn't looking for a name or fame. And it just so happened that the things that I've done have brought me some attention. And acting, I think, was quite accidental that way also. I had no intention of acting, actually. No designs whatsoever. I never saw myself on screen.
Sure.
But one of my friends, in fact, he's been a guest on your show, Karma Wanchu.
Karma Wanchu Sonam,
Yes. He made a film. It was a hurriedly made film about drug abuse.
Okay.
And he needed a slightly older character because most of the characters were youth, right? Were struggling with drug abuse issues and stuff like that. And then he needed somebody who had been there and done that. And I was his perfect candidate because I had been there and done that in real life, you know. So that's how it came about.
Sure.
But after that, because it was such a rush project, I never thought that, you know, I'd take up acting. But then again, I'd done a lot of cinema, theater in college,
Oh, so
dramas.
you do have some experience within the acting realm.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that all self-taught, of course. So from
Okay.
school up until college, I was doing plays and stuff that on stage,
Okay.
right? Which explains why I'm able to project my voice.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Because we had to do it without
Wonderful
microphone.
usage of voice and that projector, that power.
I was fortunate enough to be trained in voice modulation at least. Tashu Dorji, who by then already was a well-established actor,
Sure.
was helping somebody make a film, and this is Wangel. And they again needed somebody in a certain role, and he almost immediately, he says, he thought about me because he remembered my performances from college,
Sure.
you know, from the plays that we did in college. And then he called me and he said, hey, there's this role in a film, would you like to do it? And again, I have to do it in Dzongkha, which is a language, although it is my first language, or should be my first language. I'm embarrassed to say that I'm not entirely comfortable with it because, you know, I spent most of my early life away from home in a different country, in India.
Sure.
So I was a little hesitant about it, but I decided, since I'm not doing anything at the moment, let's try it.
Yeah,
you
why
know?
not give it a shot?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's how it came up. And of course, I had to rehearse the lines and all of that. But they didn't have a problem with my accent and all of that. Because
Okay.
in Dzongkha, I guess, halam chidu jototu mengi ki mush. So that's...
Everybody.
Yeah, so that's how it came about. And then after that, another offer came and another offer came. Right. And that's how it all happened, I guess. That's how it all happened.
How do you approach it? I mean, like, yes, you as you mentioned, you had some experience in terms of theater acting.
Right.
There are particular techniques in terms of acting,
Right.
such as classical techniques, method acting,
Right,
and
true.
Two others, I believe.
True.
Do you utilize that, or is it something that just comes natural to you according to the character?
I have a method. I have a method. Of course, early on, it was touch and go. It was just whatever came to my mind, I'd try and do that.
Okay.
And I try to make it as realistic as possible, at least in my eye.
Okay.
But over the years, you know, I looked up a lot of material. I even talked to a lot of people with experience, especially outsiders,
Sure.
when I had the chance,
Sure.
about their approaches to acting.
Okay.
I looked up videos on acting. I looked up lessons, etc. And I realized I had a very long way to go.
Sure.
You know, fortunately, I don't know if you watched this in the Actors Studio. Okay. Anyway, so it's a pretty good show on, or used to be. It doesn't exist anymore, I think. So they get all these very well-known actors, and it's at a university. I'm not quite sure which university. Could be Berkeley. Could be any of these. So the professor sits down with the guest,
Right.
and they talk about acting.
Right.
and different actors have different approaches. So I picked up a bit from here, a bit from
Okay.
there, a bit from here, a bit from there. But what I do employ most of the time is something that I picked up from Anthony Hopkins.
Okay.
All right, and his
One of the-
methodology
one of the
is
greatest,
yes, yes,
Hollywood actors,
I love
right?
the guy. I love
Right.
the guy. Yes. So one of his methods is it's you have to be meticulous though, and you have to be disciplined, and you have to put in a lot of hours.
Right.
The thing is, he reads his script
Sure.
250 times.
Wow.
250 times. Can you imagine that?
That is, wow.
Yeah.
Overkill.
No, it's not actually overkill, because when you actually try it, I don't do it 250
Okay.
times. What I'll do is I'll read the entire script about twice
Sure.
or 3 times at the most.
Okay.
But then my parts and every scene, keeping in mind the context of every scene and my chemistry with whoever the other fellow actors are, fellow characters are in the scene, I will go through it at least 30 times.
Okay.
All right? And each time that I do it, the character becomes more and more real.
Sure.
You see, you start getting into the character, then you get the nuances.
Sure.
What kind of gestures does he make?
Right.
Right? What could he do with his face, for example?
Right.
A twitch or something of that sort that is unique to him, or helps portray his character better. You know, so that's how I do my bit. You know, and it may seem very unscientific, scientific, but it works for me.
It works for you?
Yeah, it works for me. And if it works for Sir Anthony Hopkins, it works for me.
Why not, right?
right.
Do you ever, have you ever had an experience, perhaps maybe you're playing a role of a particular character and you lose yourself to it? So because you're trying to prepare how the character is feeling, what's going on in his head, that you lose yourself to the point where you might not be able to come out of it. I mean, there's like that particular danger, especially in terms of some method acting,
right,
type of acting, right?
Yeah, we've known about many of these stories, right? The De Niro's and the DiCaprio's, etc.
Exactly.
They do stuff like. I wish I could reach that level. I don't think I've ever achieved anything even remotely close to that. So although I can get into my characters, right? I don't think I get lost as such.
Sure.
There's always at the back of my mind, there's always the awareness that I'm in front of a camera, that this is all make-believe, and I am not who
that character is.
Yeah.
You are a separate person.
But when you are portraying an extreme emotion, say sorrow, when you're crying, for example, or extreme anger, and in those moments you can get lost.
Okay.
Because you're trying to get the anger from within, right? And then you let it overtake you.
And
So
it
I
needs to
think-
be realistic. I
Yeah,
mean, people will tell you, once you're on the screen, if it's not portrayed as accurately as it is, people can tell.
They can. And even yourself, I mean, sometimes, like I remember a recent crying scene where I thought I did it very convincingly. And I think I really was doing it, you know. But just for a slight fraction of a second, I suddenly came back to the realization that, hey, you're acting right now, you know. And that kind of like spoiled the entire flow.
Wow.
Yeah, just that little moment of doubt.
Was that put into the final edit of the film?
Here's the thing. Now, I wanted to do that scene not quite dramatically. I didn't want to actually cry. I didn't want to have tears and all that. Because I thought, like you said, you used the word overkill, right? So I thought that was overkill for the scene. And it doesn't fit the character as well. But the director wanted a lot more emotion, all right? So I did that. And I did a brilliant crying scene, I think. Because after we were done, they were like, wow. You know, and Sigel, who is a very seasoned actor, he was there behind the camera as well. He came over to me and he hugged me and he said, "Wow, man, that was mind blowing." But that scene's not in the film.
It's not in the film.
Yeah, it's been cut out. It's been cut out.
Well, that's the realm of cinema, isn't it? I mean, it depends on the editor, the director, the art direction, and whatnot.
But I have no complaints. I mean, the eventual decision must lie with the editors.
But let's talk
and the
about
directors.
that. Let's talk about that. I mean, in terms of sharing creative ideas and collaboration, how do you take the vision of the director and portray? I mean, how does that chemistry work, especially within the Bhutanese film industry?
Yes, that's an area that I feel we can certainly work much better on.
Okay.
You know, the editor, the script writer, the director, and at least the lead actor must share the same vision.
Right.
They have to have the same vision. Otherwise, then you don't get a complete whole. Each one comes with their own thing, but at the end, they must agree to a certain vision. Because if you don't have that vision, then you'll get something that's ad hoc, that's incongruent, that doesn't fit in, you know. And I've seen that happen because in all the films that I have done up until now, not all, but I'll say in most of the films, I have one thing in my head, the director has something else in his head, the cinematographer has something else in his head, and the editor has something else. And what comes out is something that you never even expected. I mean, my character is a person, I've tried to portray my character in a certain way, and the director has understood that, but the editor hasn't, let's say.
Sure.
You know, and so eventually what comes out is something that is totally alien to you.
Sure.
And you're like, no, man, that's not how I did it.
Is that a big issue here within the Bhutanese film industry?
I think
mean,
so.
The way the film industry functions, or the way the people work.
Right, I think so. But then again, you come across some filmmakers who are meticulous about that process as well. So Dichan Roda, for example, I've done 2 films with her.
Okay.
She's very meticulous as far as that's concerned. So we will have script reading sessions before any camera comes on.
Right.
For days, we sit together in the same room, the director, the editor, the actors, the actors, and you go through the lines, you discuss the scenes, so everybody knows what they're doing, right? And everybody understands what the other person is doing.
You're in the same page.
Right. So yeah, with the Dichan Roda, I would say that I had tremendous fun. And she's a bit of a perfectionist as well, which is always
You
good.
have to be, right? As a director, as a filmmaker,
I think so.
right?
I think so. And at the same time, there's always this thing between if you're doing a commercial film, for example, the way you act generally may be a little more exaggerated than how you would do it in, say, a film, a noir film like Rhoda does.
Right.
You know, you have to be a lot more realistic in something if you're working with Rhoda. Which is why on one of her films, I think one of my fellow actors got a little put off, I think, by the way I was acting, and he said, "Why, chugi ani serial ki acting de jada way."
So for different genres of film, different stylistic film, you have to put on a different performance.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
And I think there is that's an issue that some of our actors need to grapple with. Especially, I mean, like, I see that the way you act if you're trying to be a star is different from the way you act if you're trying to be an actor. And a typical example I would say is somebody like Salman Khan, for example.
Sure.
The way he acts in his films, I mean, he's a star.
Right.
There is no doubt about it.
But
he's not trying to be the greatest
actor.
actor.
People have built themselves up to become the
Yeah,
star.
yeah.
So there's that sense of, I mean, obviously it's a marketing strategy as
True,
well,
true.
and he is a star.
He is,
Stardom
absolutely.
is there, so he could afford to act in that sense.
Right.
And people pay to go watch him act like that.
Exactly. So I am sure that if he was acting in an artistic movie, for example, an art film, he'd have to do it differently. He can't do his same huru dabong dabong. That won't work,
people
right?
like him the same?
Yeah. People, and it would be different. Who knows? I mean, because we've seen some of the most respected actors, in fact, have tried both hands. They tried both things. You know, you do the commercial stuff and you do the arty stuff as well, and they do it with equal conviction. And I admire these people. I take my hat off to them, because in the films, especially local films, where you have especially song sequences. Those are the most difficult things for me. Most difficult. I mean, because when you're in love, for example, you don't run about trees, hide behind a flower and stuff like that, do you? You don't roll on a lawn.
Well, I mean,
if you're in love.
The way I see it, it's like a metaphorical way of saying you're in love. And you have to visualize it. Obviously.
Exactly. But that's the part that I have difficulty with. Right? Okay. Because for me, I'm trying to imagine myself being in love, and what I have to project on screen is entirely different from what I imagine in my head, right? Or what I feel in my head. So there's an incongruence between these two. And it's so difficult for me to put on these exaggerated expressions and stuff like that, which and those gestures, which some people are able to do with the great conviction, and hats off to them, really hats off to them.
It's a different sense of talent.
Exactly. And I find that so difficult to do, Sangye. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, so what kind of role do you normally take?
All right, okay. So it started off, obviously, I came into the films very late, right? I was well into my 30s by the time I got into films. I must have been, 38, I think, or 39
Sure.
when my first commercial film came along. So I was not exactly hero material because by local standards you need somebody who's younger, can be involved in romance and,
Right.
and all of that.
There's a certain sense of stereotype within what a main
true,
actor should
true,
be, right?
Right. So and we haven't reached that point in the development of Bhutanese cinema where we can have a character-driven movie where the story and the character, one certain character, it doesn't have to be somebody young,
Right.
it could be somebody old also,
Right.
can carry an entire film. We haven't reached that level yet because our audience is not ready for that. Some members in the audience, yes.
Sure.
But most people won't. If you made a film like that, it won't make any money.
It wouldn't, yeah.
Right. So to be fair to producers, you need to make the usual formula stuff, right?
You need to know who your target audience is.
Yeah, exactly,
And- right.
exactly. So, what was your question? I lost my chain of thought. Right.
What specific roles do you normally look for?
Oh,
or
okay,
is
yeah.
it
So
just-
there you go. So I was in a role where I was playing a slightly older character, but then there was I had to play flashbacks and be a young person as well, all of that, and there were song sequences and things like that as well, which was okay, right? Then after that, I had to play Ketagi Appa,
Okay.
right? Which I don't mind as well.
Okay.
But that's
So a
not-
father figure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But then those kind of roles started coming a dime a dozen after a while. I mean, I started getting many offers on that, and I have been refusing each and every one of them because I don't want to slot myself into that bracket.
Right.
that category upper bracket.
There's that danger of like you being categorized for one particular type of role.
Yeah, and besides, that's not challenging at all.
Okay.
Those roles don't carry much meat, right?
Okay.
So for me, it's not fun. It's not. It's not really fun. But Ngakile Chiki Superman that came along, and Kilitsuri offered me the role of the bad guy.
Okay.
Right. That was fun.
The anti-hero.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't really an anti-hero. I was the antagonist.
Okay.
Through and through the antagonist.
Okay.
Right? But that was fun because I didn't have to do all the romancing. I didn't have to do any of the crying.
Is that something that you wanted to tackle? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you
because
had
that's
your
not
thought-
me. I had to play a bloodthirsty,
Okay.
evil, vicious
Right.
character. And
Somebody
that's
that
not me.
people are gonna hate.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And that's not me. I'm not that sort of person,
Okay.
right? So it was somebody I had to pretend to be.
Okay.
And moreover, it was a mythological sort of character. I was
Okay.
playing a demigod.
Okay.
It was a very challenging role because I was wearing armor.
Okay.
That weighed in total about 35 kilos.
Oh, my.
All right, so with the chainmail armor and the helmet alone was like 7 kilos. Can you imagine
Wow.
that?
Wow.
It belonged to an actual demigod.
Okay.
A real Tsengi.
Okay.
Ujam
So the
Naba.
prop was actually real prop.
The helmet at least was.
Okay.
I don't know how people back then could fight with armor. I really don't know. Because, I mean, even when we play acting, right? Play fighting, the helmet would turn all of a sudden and I'd be like, I wouldn't be able to see a thing,
Okay.
Yeah. And the armor is like 28 kilos, right? The
Right.
chainmail armor itself. And I don't know how people could move around with stuff like that. And the difficult thing was if we were shooting, it was winter when we were shooting. So if we were shooting in the daytime, outside in the sun, the steel would take all the sun's heat.
Sure.
Right? And I wouldn't be wearing anything underneath except under my coat because
Sure.
back then, Tinga Bewachin, which then would wear shirts or anything
Right,
inside,
right.
right? So I had to be careful of that. So I couldn't wear all that. So the sun, the armor would take all the sun's heat.
Sure.
And I'd be roasting when everybody else was covering up. And if we were shooting at night,
It'd be
the armor
cold.
would be really
Freezing.
cold. Yeah, it would freeze, more or less. And you could feel that in your bones and you had to stick through it. So that was challenging, but I loved that role. And after that, I said, I'm going to take only baddie roles if they come my way.
Like, have you set your mind to it? Like now, from now on.
Commercial cinema.
Okay.
Commercial cinema. If at all I get roles, I'll take the baddie roles.
Sure.
I'm not going to be Ketapa.
Sure.
For sure. In fact, about a couple of days ago, somebody gave me an offer, Ketapa. I said, please.
I've done enough of
Yeah. And I said, show me a script. If it's a meaty role and there's a lot that I can play around with,
Sure.
then I'd definitely be interested.
Okay.
But otherwise, no. No. So the bad guy, the antagonist sort of the thing, or the anti-hero, until we come to a stage where a normal everyday guy who doesn't need to be good looking,
Sure.
who doesn't need to be young.
Sure.
If you can have a film built around a character like that
Sure.
and you can tell
More
a story.
character-driven,
Yeah.
okay.
A character-driven movie. Until that day, I'm going to be a bad guy.
Okay.
More or
Well,
less.
there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Aue Supe He's going to be the bad guy. But let's put on a little bit of a serious tone to this
Sure,
conversation.
absolutely.
In terms of professions such as acting,
Right.
which is an artistic field to it, how is it valued here in Bhutan? Within the
Okay.
film industry, perhaps, or
Right.
any industry, art industry, let's just say. What's your take on it?
I think actors get a raw deal to a large extent, unless you're a leading actor. So even at a film set, the lead actors will be treated very differently from the others.
Sure.
And I feel kind of uneasy with that. Maybe
Okay.
it's a tradition. Maybe that's how they do it in Bollywood or wherever, Hollywood
Okay.
anyway, because these are your prime assets on
Okay,
the set,
right.
right? So you got to take care of them. I feel everybody is important.
Sure.
From the light man,
Sure.
key grip, anybody on the set,
The entire production crew is
exactly,
important.
exactly. Without the services of the right light guy, you wouldn't have a good film,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Without somebody, a good videographer or cameraman,
Right.
you
You won't be capturing it in
Yeah,
that
exactly.
right style that you
Exactly,
want. Right?
Exactly. So I think everybody needs to be respected. But actors, I think, especially the lead actors, get good treatment.
Okay.
But the rest probably don't get as much as they deserve.
What does that mean? Like, just, what's deserving, basically? Explain that a little bit further.
All right, okay. I'd say deserving in all sorts of ways, from the respect, all right, and the regard, to actual payment. In all these ways, they suffer, I think.
Okay.
So, which is why a lot of people understand that you cannot make a living from films, acting in films, unless you are a lead actor.
Sure.
So
you can't be a supporting actor and make a living.
no,
basically.
it would be difficult, unless, of course, you're Puvatule or Gemdoji or
Sure.
or
Who are normally casted in
Yeah.
almost all the films.
right, and they have at any particular time they'd be having 4 or 5 different projects at the
Sure.
same time. So they come.
Reality shows, films,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But the rest, it's difficult. And I'm not saying it's the responsibility of the film association or of the director or the producers to look after these people. But I'm saying at least give them the right regard.
Sure. When they are involved in the film.
True.
Okay. How can we? What are the challenges basically? I mean,
For
for being a supporting actor, perhaps, or just artists in general, not just actors, but perhaps maybe even musicians or artists, painters.
okay. I get your drift. I think anybody with a specialized skill needs to be recognized for his skill and needs to be rewarded commensurately as well. I noticed that it's not just in the film industry, but very pronounced in the film industry, by the way, that a lot of people with specialized skills get underpaid or don't get paid at all. And that's something that I cannot possibly agree with. I feel that is wrong, entirely wrong. The way I see it is, if somebody has a specialized skill, whether they're a dancer, a singer,
Sure.
a craftsman, a
Sure.
painter,
Sure.
whatever, a musician, they have invested a lot of time in honing that
Sure.
skill.
That
all
skill, right?
Right.
And it takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time.
Yes.
And discipline
dedication,
and
right.
sacrifice.
Yes.
Right? So the same time that you as a producer have invested in putting your story together and getting you the right scriptwriter, getting all your
Perhaps your equipment,
logistics, your
right.
logistics sorted out. That's the kind of dedication this guy, this talented guy with the specialized skill, has spent on what you do, on his own skill.
right.
So the analogy that I use is, if you go to a shop, you can't expect to get anything for free,
Obviously not.
right? You have to pay for it,
Right.
Right? So-
Nothing is free in life.
Exactly, exactly. Now, if you know the shopkeeper and you have a personal relationship, he might be willing to give you a freebie now and then.
Sure.
You know,
Hey, you're a regular customer,
Yeah.
so hey, take this
Exactly.
one on me. Yeah.
But he will always make a profit from you.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And that's a fair exchange.
Sure.
In order for that commodity that you want, you pay.
Pay for it,
Right.
right.
And I think the same rationale has to be applied to using anybody's specialized skill.
Sure.
So like I was telling you about writing these projects right now, right? These guys are investing in businesses, right? They want to make money. Now, the same amount that that guy has spent on putting together his business, planning it, training, human resources, logistics, doing his calculations, all of that is the time that I have invested in honing my writing skills.
Exactly.
Right? So, which is why, in his eyes, I may be able to do it very easily. You know? But that's not something that anybody else can do. I mean, not everybody can do it. There are people out there who can do it, but not everybody can do it. So, I have to get paid commensurately for that because I've invested a lot of time.
Right.
Right? And this is the thing that escapes most people, that it's not money actually, it's time.
Time.
Yeah.
Which you can't get back.
Exactly. All of us have limited time. All of us have limited time. And for you to be able to spend time on somebody else's work or somebody else's project, that person has to respect that.
Sure.
Right? Because in the end, we can't ask for any more time than we already have. If I'm supposed to live till the age of 50, and touch wood, and I can't get a minute more. Well, I can't get a minute more then. There's no way that even if I have all the wealth in the world and I say, hey, take my money, but give me a little more time, that's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. So in the end, value has to come from time. So when somebody commits their time, and especially time to do a specialized work, you have to reward that person commensurately. And I have said this on social media, particularly in regard to the film industry. And I'm not saying everybody does it in the film industry, but I have noticed that it happens a lot in the film industry. Right? And I find that strange because most of the people who are established in the film industry are people who work their way up.
Okay.
You know?
So they've gone through the same thing.
Yeah, they've gone through that. So they should be able to understand.
So is it a vicious cycle within, let's just say within the film industry? Is it a vicious
certainly
cycle?
seems that way. And one of the things is this, is because a lot of them look at it as a business, which it is.
Well,
and business is all about wheeling and dealing.
Sure.
But why shortchange these people? This is what I feel. I'm not saying that they should not do it for reduced rates because the rates have to be determined by the quality of the work.
Right.
Let's say you have a musician, but the stuff that he's playing is stuff that any other musician can play.
Okay.
Then why pay him high at all?
Sure.
Right? You'd probably pay him a lot less, right? But don't do it for free. That's what I'm saying. Don't expect it for free.
That musician is still providing a particular service or a particular talent that they have, right?
So, again, it might seem like I am trying to force this matter for my own benefit, but I'm just using my example over here. So when people come to me and ask me to do a voiceover, for example, for a documentary, I have a certain rate that I charge.
Okay.
And for them, what they see is me sitting behind the microphone and just reading that thing out. Right?
They don't realize the voice modulation,
exactly.
The stressing of it,
exactly.
right? Tonality.
Right.
There's so many things.
Yeah, so many things that go into it, right?
Several years of practice to hone that skill.
Exactly. And if they could get it anywhere else, then by all means, just do it.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And don't pay me all that much. Pay me what you pay that other guy. But if I can do it better than most others, and I'm not saying I'm the best runner, but I'm just saying that I am of a certain level that I feel comfortable enough to charge a certain price for it. I would expect that. And very often what will happen is, say somebody is making a documentary, okay? Now what they'll do is in order to get the documentary, they'll go and they'll probably get involved in a bidding process or whatever.
Okay.
And they'll do it for a very low rate.
Okay.
But they've already made an arrangement with you saying, okay, we have this project coming up.
Okay.
And you'll do the script and you'll do the voiceover.
Right.
Okay. And eventually they come to you and you say, okay, cool. And then you do the voiceover. And then when you finally come to the payment, so they say, budget, no. I think that's very unfair. Very unfair on the talent that you're using.
Sure.
So if you're going to do it for that budget, then go look for somebody who probably will do it at that rate and who won't give you that much quality also.
Has this kind of has this particular culture of shortchanging artists become a culture here?
I think it probably exists everywhere in the world, but I do think that things could become a little more systematic, and especially considering that we have a film association, right?
Sure.
And I'm going to get hell over here now, because anybody who see when
Well,
I took
this
out,
is a conversation, a dialogue, perhaps,
Right.
maybe, and we ought to talk about it.
I don't have any problems with that.
Yeah, continue, please. Yes.
All right. So when I did that thing that you talked about, when I talked about this, that people should get paid, people with specialized skills should get paid commensurately. Somebody took a screenshot of me on that video, put it up on one of these forums, Druk News or whatever, and said, "Is he a gold digger or soup licker?" I don't even know what that means, by the way. But to call me a gold digger, I don't. Anyway, I don't mind, because anything that goes out in the public sphere, there will always be people who
You're
won't like
susceptible
it.
to the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't mind at all. I mean, like, I didn't respond, actually. I just didn't respond at all. And I didn't mind, actually, because I expected it also. But it was taken down after a while, I think, because maybe because they saw that they couldn't fault my logic over there. So, yeah, I just feel that people with specialized skills need a lot more respect, a lot more thing. And the Film Association could take a lead in something like this.
I wanted to ask you about a possible solution to that. And
I don't think there's any hard and fast solution, particularly because here we're talking about human impulses, human greed, or whatever it is, and negotiations, right? Part of business is negotiations, how you negotiate. So between yourself as a person with specialized skill and the person who's hiring you, you ought to be able to negotiate also. And of course, you have to cut room also. Sometimes maybe that person is desperate. And you know that person, so why not do it for free for that person?
So you deal with it accordingly to the situation.
Right. But I think it is wrong for anybody to expect anybody else to do work for them free. That's what I believe.
Especially once you're in the main industry.
Right.
I mean, I understand, like when I was a film student, I mean, we had no money. We had to hire actors for free.
Right.
And most of the time what we did was we hired theater students who was also trying to build a portfolio because eventually this would sort of help them out in their career.
Right.
So that was the only scenario where we couldn't pay the actors or the talents, basically.
And I think that's fine as well, because especially if somebody is fresh and is an unproven quantity, then that person can't command an exorbitant fee either, right? So you have to start small. Everybody's got to start small. What I'm saying is that it is wrong for people to do a project and to expect people to help them for free. And that's just not right. It's not right. It's disrespectful. It's downright disrespectful, and it's unfair. So I think, I don't really have a solution, but I think the Film Association could certainly
look into it.
Yeah, look into it and have a system in place. And also this sort of dialogue, where we talk about things like this, is important, I think. And I don't mean any offense to anybody out there. Maybe some people haven't thought it through. Maybe people have just approached their projects as businesses and not really wanted to exploit other people, but just thought, okay, I can cut expenses here and I can cut expenses there. All I'm saying is, think about these people as well. They have families also. They have business. They're dependent on their skills for
and
their
ultimately it's the
survival.
time that they give.
Exactly. And like I said, in the end, people with specialized skills, on the other hand, on the other side, should not expect that they will get paid more than they deserve also. So I mean, like, why do you pay $1 million for a Picasso? Because that's a Picasso, right? But if you went and picked up something from the street, some street art, you probably pay a lot less, right? $1,000 or whatever, 200 neutrons or whatever. You could buy stuff at that as well, because that's because of the quality of the work and the name of the person, the reputation. All of that comes into the picture. So I don't think people with specialized skills also need to think that, I am so good that that you better pay me. If you're an unproven quantity, I mean, you may be exceptionally talented, right? And you let your talent speak for itself. But if you're a fresh name and you're trying to prove yourself, then you need to be able to understand also that you won't really get that rate that most of the leaders in the industry get. Right? So that also, they need to be realistic about it.
So what do you think about the concept of how, how there are some artists who just feels, hey, I'm just purely in it for the art. I'm not looking for the monetary value because what's important is my art.
Okay.
What's your take on that?
will only say this much, that quality of life is a very personal decision.
Sure.
What is important for you may not be important for me.
Sure.
What's important for me may not be important for you, right? And we all have to make our own decisions. We all have to make our own value judgments about what's important and what's not. So if somebody feels that way, well, hats off to them. It's very courageous, I would say. I'd love to be an artist. I'd really want to be. In fact, I fancied myself as an artist for many years, no doubt. But I haven't quite got to that level.
Okay.
So until I do, I need the money.
Everybody needs to survive, obviously. I mean, we live in the real world where you gotta fuel up your car, you gotta buy your groceries, right?
Exactly. And I'm lucky that, but I'm not greedy. That is one thing I would say. And I do not put a monetary value on everything that I do.
Sure.
Some things I do just out of the sheer joy of it. I used to be in a social service group, for example, that used to work at the clock tower, clean up drains, do stuff like that every Sunday without fail. We used to do it, and the beautiful thing about doing something like that, and I'm not trying to wax lyrical about myself and make myself look good, but I'm telling you honestly, I did it because I respect each patch of ground that makes up my country.
Sure.
I love this country. Okay. But what I found in the process is that when you're doing something just for the love of it, all right, without any expectation of return or of reward, it's a very liberating feeling. And what you get in the process is joy. It's pure joy. So when I used to do these social service sessions, and I don't do it anymore because I don't have the same group. The group disintegrated.
Sure.
But I'd love to continue doing it. And that's the beautiful thing about it. When you do it without any sense of reward or any expectation of reward, at the end of the day, you find that you have given of yourself willingly.
Sure.
Right? That's such a liberating feeling that everybody, after that project is done, everybody's in a good mood. Every Sunday we'd sit down, we'd have a cup of tea. Unfailingly, somebody would sponsor our tea and our snacks.
Sure.
Somehow or the other.
Because I'm sure most of these works were beneficial to the community.
I suppose so. Right. But somebody or the other would step up and do it.
Sure.
And help. I cleaned up Lunchbaka, for example, with the help of the Day Soups about 2 years ago, twice. And on both times, residents came by with fruity and water and stuff like that. So those are the rewards, and you feel good about it as well. So I would say that those people who can do it for the love of just doing it, hats off to them. I think that's what they get at the end of the day. I mean, that's the closest that I can identify to it.
Sure.
But definitely, if I am doing something artistic, I want to be paid for it.
Sure.
Definitely.
Sure. You want to be compensated for the time that you put in, for the talent that you bring in.
True.
Definitely.
And that's why elsewhere in the world people pay for art, right?
Sure.
I mean, even if it's a street performer, somebody playing music, busking on the streets, for example, people pay them well,
Yes.
Because
Definitely.
they understand that, hey, this guy is trying to undergo a musical journey. He
Right.
doesn't have the time to go from office to office
Right.
and work 9 to 5 and all of that,
Sure.
because he has to dedicate his time to
Right.
his art. And he's doing it here on the street, and he's entertaining us at the same time. So let's respect that, and you pay for that. So yeah, I definitely want to. We haven't quite reached that level, no doubt.
Okay.
I tried busking a couple of years ago outside a bookstore, and people crowded around. People crowded around, and it was just not me. It was a group of us.
Sure.
And people are having fun. But the minute the hat came out, and you went around asking for
donation
donations, the crowd dispersed. Sooner than you can play a chord, they're all gone.
Wow.
But on the few occasions, like Timputsechu earlier, when we didn't have the pandemic, the streets would be closed, and the city corporation was kind enough to let all sorts of things happen on the road. So when we did busking a few times back then, I remember the bands that played got pretty decently paid.
Sure.
People were willing to give, and that was nice. Right.
Well, I mean, we have a long way to go in terms of recognizing, I think, talent and valuing talent, be it in compensating them for their talent and for their time.
I think one of the things that prevents us from actually being professional about it and paying people for their time and their talent has been that the idea of art
Okay.
in the Western sense has never really existed in Bhutan.
Okay.
All right. All art and all performance that we have done has been more about community involvement.
Sure.
So you see, for example, singers, dancers, etc. They're not up there to perform. They're there so that you can join them. And which is why if you find our traditional songs, for example, and our traditional dances are so simple.
Yes.
Repetitive movements,
Right.
so that the community can get involved. The idea of an artist coming in front of you and performing and entertaining you has never really existed. You know, so even if you look at art is devotional in nature. The religious art, artists don't sign their names under a debris that they have painted. You wouldn't find that. It's a work of devotion. It's selfless, right? So there is no idea, there's no sense of a performer who's entertaining you, and therefore that person needs to be paid or rewarded for entertaining you. That concept hasn't existed, I think. So maybe because that tradition hasn't been there, it's
a
taking
little bit
time.
hard for us to-
Yeah, it's taking time for Bhutanese to pick up.
Sure.
Right. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
But
so
do you? Well, let's continue
All
on
right,
that.
okay.
It's kind of fascinating because it is an interesting topic. Do you think that we are on the way to sort of getting to that point where we do value artists and we will compensate our artists and for their talent?
Okay. Another thing that we
Where's
also
the
need to-
evolution, basically?
Right. Another thing we need to be very cognizant about is the fact that as economics go, we're not really the most advanced nation.
Yeah, we're still a developing country.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Nation.
So to have patrons of arts, you need a reasonably well-developed economy as well.
Okay.
So you need to have an upper class of people who are ready to pay good money for good art. You see, and that's not necessarily the case in Bhutan.
In Bhutan, as
Right.
of now.
Yeah, the taste for art
Sure.
is something that needs to be developed also. And like I said, to have patrons for art, you need to have enough people who can afford good art. And then it becomes more possible, more plausible also.
Sure.
We haven't quite reached that stage.
Could this be another contributing factor to this notion of how we don't value artists and their talent? Most of us, I'm speaking in general right now, we expect art to come free to us. I mean, could that be a contributing factor to that?
Could be, because the
Because, I mean,
Kiddu
be it
mentality.
music, we expect it for free.
Right.
I'm afraid to say this, but even in terms of watching films,
Right. Yeah, we do that. Why
we
not? Yeah, we
want
do
it for
that.
free.
Yeah, we want it for free.
I mean, is that the mentality that's sort of like disrupting this entire sense of valuing art and, you know, and respecting art?
I think so. And to a large degree, we're so used to having hand-me-downs, right? I mean, which Bhutanese out there would ever think that in other countries you have to pay just to go have a medical checkup? And you have to pay quite a lot. And that is not the case here, right? We've all grown up with free education, free health services, and a lot of other provisions that more or less come to you for free, because we've been more or less a welfare state. And the state actually had no choice also. You know, we were at a point in our evolution as a society where people had to be given down freebies. Otherwise, there was no way that we were going to be able to become an educated society or a healthy society. It had to happen that way. So that sort of thing, I think, has persisted. And you may be right. I haven't done any research into that, but I am quite sure it's a plausible argument that Kiddu mentality, that wanting. I mean, imagine some of our most well-to-do people actually go seeking for Kiddu. You know, and I'm not shy to say anything to say that, because that has certainly been the case. So we're so used to having hand-me-downs and freebies that I think to a large extent we expect our art to come to us free as well. Yeah, there may be that may be a plausible argument.
Sure. Now, unfortunately, due to the lack of time, I'm gonna have to finish it off the show.
Why? We can still go on and on. No, come on. Yeah.
But I will ask you one last question
Yes.
before we sign off. Now, as an actor, obviously being involved in the film industry, I ask this question to all my guests, be it filmmakers or cinematographers or documentary filmmakers, as an actor within the film industry, and if there's any young enthusiast of cinema, of acting, or wanting to be an actor, considering what we have just talked about, what's your advice that you would give them?
Ooh, that's a big one. I'm not one to advise people, really. I'm not one to advise people. Like I said, I respect the fact that quality of life is a very personal decision. So what works for me may not necessarily work for you.
Sure.
Right? So I'm not one to tell you should do this or you should do that. But what I can say, in a very general sense, whether you're an artist or not, whatever you do, I think a lot of our people are lacking in self-belief.
Sure.
And self-belief backed with action. And I'd put my hand up and say, I have been one of those people as well. I think a lot of our, and again, this kid mentality thing comes into the picture. A lot of our younger people are living in times that are far more competitive than when we were growing up,
Sure.
when I was growing up. And yet they don't get it. They don't get it that the one thing that will propel you forward is your belief in yourself.
And backing it up.
Yeah, and backing it up, exactly. Because if you don't have that, you won't stick out.
Sure.
Right? You won't stick out. And why would anyone want to back you? Right? So if you want to achieve anything, whether it be in film or music or art or whatever it is that you're doing, and this is why I hold up Sangye Choiphel CG7 as a role model, really,
Sure.
is because he has worked hard.
And he
had
backs
this
it up.
belief. Yes, exactly. He has opened and the wider he opens the door the wider he opens the door into the outside opportunities, the wider he opens the door for the rest of us.
Sure.
If we are only willing to work as hard as him,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And go where he's gone, or go even beyond where he's gone.
Sure.
Right. So I would suggest that, and that's my only piece of advice to the younger people out there. Understand that if you have capabilities, back it up. Back it up with action. And in that respect, in fact, I'll tell you what, disregard everything that I said up until now. Here's the one thing that I would say for young people out there, habits. Everything is down to habits. If you have a bad habit right now and you don't do something about it, it will cost you tremendously in the years ahead. It'll cost you tremendously. Okay? If you have a good habit or if you cultivate good habits, whatever good habits you cultivate in the years ahead, it'll give you rich rewards.
Rewards are multitude.
Yes. Right. So it's all down to habits. And I'll give you a very simple example. In my case, for example, when it comes to writing, I never consider a piece of writing done when I get to the last sentence.
Sure.
After the last sentence, I know I have to revisit it 2, 3, 4 times and
Several
rewrite it.
re-edits.
Exactly.
Right.
Until I have a polished piece. And that's become automatic to me now. Now, when I finish writing something, or come to the end of something, it's never finished. For me, it is finished only after I have revisited it so many times. Then I feel like, okay, I've written.
So in a sense, you have to be a bit of a perfectionist. I mean, you have to put in the time. I mean,
Well, it's just a
I'm
habit,
just saying
I'm saying.
perfectionist, but yes, you inculcate that habit of
Exactly.
being a perfectionist. You have
I
to
guess.
go over again to make a valuable piece
Yes.
of
So
writing or...
when you're starting off,
Sure.
in the initial years when I tried to develop that habit, it was difficult, of course. But after a while, it became a habit. So now, for me, it's no longer a case of saying, "Oh man, this is never finishing. When am I going to be done with this?" You know, jada. That never comes. I'm satisfied only when I have a polished piece in front of me.
Sure.
And that has become a habit for me. So what has happened is that people value what I write now. You know, so. It wasn't a very conscious decision on my part, but I just thought it's something that I should do, and I did it. And it has reaped rich rewards in the process. So yeah, habits. It's all down to habits. That's the one message that I would like to leave for younger people out there. And I'm sure my elders would agree with me as well. Everything is down to habit. It's just down to habit.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
There you have it.
There you have it. Make sure you inculcate good habits and implement that throughout your life. You will have multiple benefits that comes along with it. Thank you very much, Aue Supe,
Thank you,
for your
Sangye.
wise advice And for anybody who's watching out there, take in that advice. I mean, it's a good, very, very good advice. Thank you once
Thank
again.
you. It's been
for
a
being on the
wonderful
show.
time. I've had a wonderful time talking with you, Sangye. A beautiful 1 hour, as you mentioned in the beginning. You don't know how that 1 hour passes, and that's been true in our case. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you
immensely.
very much, and have a good night.